Hello and welcome to the Johnny Dale Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game. Happy anniversary, as today is our 1 year anniversary of this podcast. Today we are going over the whys and hows of sitting out Brock Purdy for Sunday's game, and we will take a look at all of the Pro Bowlers being selected and snubbed from the 49ers. You're inside the Johnny Dale Football Academy. Hello again, Niner faithful, and welcome into the channel that answers the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and Twitter or X. Also, the audio versions are always found on the usual suspects, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat right now, it's probably because you are subscribed and you've hit the notification bell. So when you're sharing with your friends and family, the Niner faithful, be sure to let them know. Also, the best way to boost the algorithm is hashtag HA. Hashtag HA. Happy anniversary. So normally it's hashtag JD49. A lot of you have put that. I'm changing it up a little bit for today. I'm very thankful. It was last year. I think it was January 5th, technically, was our very first show. So hashtag HA if you would like to boost the algorithm for all of the Niner faithful to see what we are talking about tonight. So, yes, I'm throwing all the curveballs in there. So, we have a lot to get to. Johnny, happy anniversary. How you feeling? Faithful, how you feeling?
Oh, happy anniversary, Adam. Thank you so much. It has been a wonderful ride the last sorry, some of the chat skipping around a little bit every once in a while it pops up in here, but it has been a wonderful ride the last 12 months. We've had a lot of great shows. We've had some mediocre shows, but we have overall had a great time together. You have learned some things about me. I've learned some things about you. You figured out that I'm a lot more sarcastic than you probably anticipated going in. So yeah, but it's been a great 12 months. So happy anniversary and thank you, Adam. Most people don't know this, that Adam is the reason this podcast exists. I had tried, maybe some of you saw some of the early attempts last season for me to do a podcast. I was trying to add something that into the repertoire of content, and it was just me solo, and there was a couple shows that I did there and they were just not that great. I didn't think they were very good, and I was seeing them like, this is just not it. And Adam hadn't even found me yet, and then he found the channel and reached out to me and was like, hey, you're probably not going to have any idea who I am, and this is going to sound really crazy. Do you want to start a podcast? I do some of this stuff. And he reached out and we practiced for like 6 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that, before we even went live. We were just recording some episodes together, trying to work on the way we interacted, and it's been a crazy 12 months. And we were able to do stuff through the off season, which I had struggled doing for the last several years. And so it's been awesome, and it's been a great time. And Adam is the chocolate to my peanut butter. That's a little
Dr. Steve.
that's one way to put it, I guess. I would say he's the carrots to the peas, or the pea, to quote Forrest Gump, we were like peas and carrots. So yeah, it's something like that. But yeah, it's been a great time, and I'm excited to dive into some stuff tonight. It was a big day for a few 49ers, because most of the time there's a lot of contract incentives that are on the line for guys making the Pro Bowl. And if you were selected, there's some good financial rewards that come along with that.
Yeah, we're going to get into a lot of that. I feel like first we're going to get into the Pro Bowl for sure. I want to cover one thing first and kind of get that out of the way and get the faithfuls get their take on this and ask you what you think because I do see what Steve Young is saying about Brock Purdy. I'm sure we've seen that Steve Young is a little bit more, I would say, on the nervous side of things of Brock Purdy sitting. And we talked a little bit about that before on our show um earlier in the week, but we didn't know at that point what was going on. We did hint at, hey, I'm sure we'll know and we'll talk about it. And so Sam Darnold does get the start and Brock Purdy unless I'm wrong is officially ruled out even, right? And so what is our take on that? What do you think about what Steve Young said? Are we a little bit more on the nervous Nelly side or are we just feeling pumped and ready to go?
Not nervous, not on the nervous side at all. When remember how Brock Purdy started out the season against the Steelers after only being 4.5 months removed from major surgery on his throwing arm, had not played, didn't get any reps during training or during OTAs or mini camps. He just got the training camp reps, and people were, remember, people were freaking out over 5 interceptions in practice, how that there really needed to be a real competition with Trey Lance and all this stuff. And then we get it come out the gates, score 30 points and blow out the Steelers. With Brock Purdy getting pressured left and right by TJ Watt, just whooping Colt McKivitz. So, I'm not concerned in that way. Because here's the thing. We've seen Kyle Shanahan win 2 playoff games with a team coming off the bye week with his quarterback throwing a combined like 17, 18 passes. Um, I'm not saying we can repeat that this year, but when playoff Shanahan, as far as during the playoffs, is the ability they have to get that run game and that defense going is just a little bit different. And we also know the 49ers with Brock Purdy in the starting lineup in the playoffs are 2-0. The 49ers with Brock Purdy on the bench because he's injured are 0-1. And I would much rather, more than anything, go into the playoffs with for sure you have a healthy Brock Purdy. That's the number one goal. So, look, there's like 10 teams who are sitting their starting quarterbacks this week. So I get it. Lamar Jackson isn't playing this week either. And so does he share the same concerns about Lamar Jackson? You know, uh, Carson Wentz is the one starting for the Rams. I get it; it's only 1 week, but again, it's just the biggest thing that you want right now is a healthy Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I agree. I get that the I don't want to say rust factor because even Debo said that it's not really rust. Like some of us need to get healthy and that kind of thing. I get that football is just different. It's not like you play every day like baseball or basketball, back to backs or multiple games in a week. And I just think with Brock Purdy, it's about his footwork, seeing defenses. Okay, that doesn't like go away. It's not gonna be like, "Oh, now his footwork is bad." I mean, he's been doing this his whole life. He's been reading defenses, moving his feet, making the reads, doing the things that he needs to do his whole life, having a couple weeks off. I will say, I don't think Michigan University, I don't think they looked too rusty, did they? Especially in overtime. As we do have Dr. Steve coming through as per usual with the super chat. Um, as he's always good for a great great laugh. Dr.
That's
Steve Brule
amazing.
says, "I'm not only a doctor, but I'm a proctologist." That I don't know if I have. I'll be honest. I've seen some good ones from like in October we had Brocktober and these types of things, but man, Dr. Steve coming through. Thank you for the super chat. That's some
That
great
is
good
probably the
words
best Brock Purdy pun I've heard
in a
yet. The
while.
Broctologist. Like, that is
Proctologist.
amazing.
Let's
I
go.
mean, it works on so many levels. You know, you could say he kicks butt. Yeah, he all sorts of things like there. Yeah. I mean,
Oh
they're
man,
yeah, he
solid.
really,
Thank you,
really
Dr.
probes the defenses.
Oh
Um,
gosh. All right, all right. This is a family show. This is a kid-friendly show. We probably got Don Dell listening. We don't
yeah,
want
she was on the chat earlier.
So thank you though, Dr. Steve. Seriously, thank you to all who support the channel. Feel free to hit that button and give a super chat, and we will for sure read your comment as quickly as we can. So, okay, Brock Purdy, we're not going to be a dead horse. I was thinking of another pun to use, and I didn't have anything. So, um, we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, let's get into the Pro Bowl here. So, do you want to go over the players that were kind of like obvious that were getting in? I mean, we have a long list. What are we doing?
So I say we just talk about, because the list that I don't know if people follow Ian Rappaport on Twitter.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
going to
got
show
to.
everybody the screen here
This is a must
because you
follow.
cannot see anything. So this was the picture that Ian Rappaport put up before the Pro Bowl rosters were announced of the fan voting. It is as impossible to read as it looks. You have to blow this thing up like 500% to read anything.
Right, right.
So I'm sure even if people saw the post, no, very few people actually saw what how many, who was there, and what the rankings of voting were. And what that was the fan voting. So that was fans voting at games. Most of that was on social media. A lot of it happened on Twitter or X, and was a lot of the fan voting. And there were 18 49ers that were either first or second. Most of them were first. I think there was like 4 of them in there were second place in the fan voting. And when you look at like NFC, I think it was 16 or 17 guys. Because, for example, Brandon Aiyuk was number 2 in fan voting, and number 1 in fan voting was Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, I mean, and some of those they were number 2 behind their own guys. Like Chase Young was number 2 in the voting behind Nick Bosa, and Javon Hargrave was number 2 voting behind uh, Eric Armstead. Dre Greenlaw was number 2 voting behind Fred Warner. So you had a lot of that happening. And so there was a number of guys who didn't make the Pro Bowl because fan voting counts for 33% of the votes. I'm not sure what the scoring system they have in there is. And then players and coaches, as far as number 1 in voting, number 2 in voting, number 3, like how they score that. But players and coaches make up 66% of the voting on that. So just because a guy was leading the fan voting doesn't mean they got into the Pro Bowl. And that's what happened with a number of these guys. Like Ray McLeod was the special teams player, which is not surprising that he didn't get voted in because the guy has missed almost half the season.
Right.
And, that's one where, thanks to great Niner fan faithful show out on social media, he's getting a lot of votes, but obviously he's not going to be a guy that players and coaches vote for when he's missed like 6-7 games. Mitch Wisnowski as a punter was not selected to the Pro Bowl, but he led in voting. Tabor Pepper, who's got a really interesting social media account,
Yeah.
was number 1 in fan voting, did not make it in. Chase Young was number 2 by fan voting, did not make it in. Jake Brendel was number 1 in fan voting, even over Jason Kelsey, which is a little crazy, and didn't make it in. And I understand why. Jake Brendel
Right.
has played well, but he is not
No.
on the level of like a Frank Ragnow or Jason Kelsey. That's just, we should understand that. Eric Armstead was number 1 in fan voting, did not make it in. Now, this one I sort of can understand for injury. He has missed several games this year. And it is hard to put a guy in who through 16 games, I think he's only played 12. And his numbers aren't quite as much there. I think I think he should make it. He should have made it as an alternate. But you had Aaron Banks was leading in the guard voting. He did not make it in. Again, I'm not surprised. He's missed a bunch of games, and he has not been playing that well when he's in there. So I get fans wanting to vote their people in, but that one doesn't make sense. Now the two that we can make an argument, absolutely, maybe, and not so absolutely, but we're going to talk about this that didn't make it in, and there's we I think we have cause to make an argument. Our Dre Greenlaw did not make it, and Brandon Aiyuk did not make it. Both of them. Dre Greenlaw was number 2 in fan voting in the NFC, only behind Fred Warner, and Brandon Aiyuk didn't make it in, who was the number 1 NFC wide receiver in fan voting. So that means with 4 other receivers making it in front of Brandon Aiyuk, that means Brandon Aiyuk was voted very poorly by coaches and players. And so there's just some things there I wonder about, and we'll talk about that, I think.
Yeah, the fan voting gets a little goofy because you have by far the best team in the NFC, basically a 2-game lead. It's not even close. And so, okay, the most popular team gets a lot of votes. Last year, I don't wanna say it was exactly the same, but I feel like we were a little bit annoyed with the Eagles, and I it just goes that way, and so this year, I'm sure all of the NFL other fans besides our fans are, "Oh, geez," saying what you said, "Jake Brendel, who is that? Why is he getting" "Eric Armstead's not that good. Why is he getting all the votes?" Well, because he plays on the best team. So, I think that's a huge part of it. The
And
Aiyuk
our team isn't getting booed by their own fans at home.
Yeah, that's very fair. I'm trying to remember. I'm not saying you're wrong. Halftime of the Ravens game, I don't recall. Was there no really
No, because we've had a good enough year. The
yeah.
Eagles fans have been booing. One, they boo their team really pretty quickly. But two, the last 5 weeks for the Eagles have been rough, uh, very rough. Ever since they were
Oh,
visited by the proctologist, they've been walking a little side to side. So,
gosh.
um,
Oh god.
they've had some struggles, and their fans are turning on them.
Yeah, and it's Philly though. They booed and snowed Santa. They booed like Allen Iverson, like they're one of their best players ever. So, yeah, we're done talking about Philly, that's for sure. So, okay, I'm curious what everyone thinks of Brandon Ayuk, and do you know I don't know for sure, so I'm legit asking on the incentives. You talked about that earlier. He has a right to be pretty upset, right?
So Brandon Ayuk doesn't have those kinds of incentives because he's still on his rookie deal. And so there's not the Pro Bowl incentives. He's pretty much locked into his contract. Now this will become a big deal going forward. Who this really affects in the wide receiver room more than anything is Debo Samuel. I think there's going to end up being some credits back to the 49ers for Debo Samuel not making the Pro Bowl. So, there's something there. But I think Brandon Ayuk is an absolute snub here. When you start looking at, okay, who did make it to the Pro Bowl? You're looking at it was AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nakua, and Mike Evans. And Puka Nakua, uh, I can see that. He was a guy that was their main weapon most of this season. He was for them what Christian McCaffrey has been for us most of the year as far as in terms of volume. Same with CeeDee Lamb. They were the number 1 offensive weapons on their team, on some 2 teams that have done a lot offensively. 2 guys that I think you can make an argument that Brandon Ayuk, might be able to get in over are AJ Brown and Mike Evans. And AJ Brown, that one's a little bit more convincing as far as him making it over Brandon Ayuk. He's had a decent year. He's had a pretty good year, and they've been able to put up quite a few points. But he's got more touchdowns. But one guy that just doesn't make sense to me as far as making it over Brandon Ayuk is Mike Evans. When you really start looking at these two guys in comparison, and when you start figuring that, you know, Brandon Aiyuk was leading the fan voting over Mike Evans, this just doesn't make sense to me. Why is Mike Evans? It's feeling like Mike Evans is making this as almost a lifetime achievement award, that he's perceived as being a Pro Bowl player, and because he's done that, that Brandon Aiyuk would have had to have a monster year, talking 1,700 yards, kind of receiving year, to really actually pass up Mike Evans. But if we just look at the numbers comparison, Mike Evans in 16 games has 76 receptions. Brandon Aiyuk in 15 games, 72 receptions. So he's got 4 more receptions than Brandon Aiyuk. Wow. Okay. Reception yards for Mike Evans, 1,233 yards. For Brandon Aiyuk, 1,317 yards. So Brandon Aiyuk has 84 more receiving yards in one fewer game than Mike Evans. If you look at yards per catch or yards per reception, Mike Evans is 16.2, Brandon Aiyuk 18.3. So he's getting 2.1 yards per catch more than Mike Evans. Now, where they do separate is that Mike Evans has 13 receiving touchdowns. Brandon Aiyuk has 7. So, the touchdowns are a big deal. But when you also look at the 49ers, they're a team that when they get within the 3-yard line, it's going to be Deebo Samuel or Christian McCaffrey almost every time. And that's just what it is, and they're running it most of the time. It's like 95% of our touchdowns when we get into that area are going to be Deebo or Christian McCaffrey running it in some way. And a lot of times Brandon Aiyuk is the number one in the progression if we are throwing it within the 5-yard line. But teams have also then they're rotating and rolling coverage towards Brandon Aiyuk. And so Christian McCaffrey's gotten several touchdowns this year where Brandon Aiyuk was the number 1 in the progression and Christian McCaffrey was number 4 in the progression. So, that's not on Brandon Aiyuk when they're playing zone coverages and rolling it to him. Actually, that's something to credit him with. And then when they start to even separate more when you start looking at some of these advanced stats. So if we look at these two guys together, their yards before catch per reception, that's meaning how many yards. Basically, it's how deep they're catching every ball. And so that is 13.1 for Brandon Aiyuk, 12.1 for Mike Evans. So Brandon Aiyuk, he's catching the ball at an average depth of 1 yard deeper than Mike Evans. If you look at yards after catch per reception, so this is a big one. This is how many yards per catch are you getting more after you catch it. Brandon Aiyuk, 5.2. Mike Evans, 4.1. So that means Brandon Aiyuk is getting 1 more yard per catch over Mike Evans. When you look at, and then another one that's really big is drop percentage. Brandon Aiyuk, 2%. Mike Evans, 5.5%. That's a big difference. So, Mike Evans is dropping the ball at a rate over double what Brandon Aiyuk is. When you click quarterback rating when targeting that player, Brandon Aiyuk, 124.3, Mike Evans, 115.8. So, you can't look at any of these numbers and say Mike Evans should be in the Pro Bowl over Brandon Aiyuk. The only difference is receiving touchdowns. Every other single metric, Brandon Aiyuk is leading Mike Evans, and it's pretty sound.
Which I was going to ask you. I mean, it's almost double. So in touchdowns, I wonder, is that to me? I'll say this. I will admit that if the situation was reversed and Evans was on our team and I was advocating and saying, but the guy had 13 touchdowns, that's where it's, to me, where it can get a little like, okay, I see where they were. I mean, the guy led the league. He had more than Tyreek Hill. There's no other receiver that has more receiving touchdowns than Mike Evans. It's hard to to me, it's, as much as I love Brandon Aiyuk, it is hard to say that the guy who has the most touchdowns receiving in the whole NFL over Cheetah, even that he's not going to be in the Pro Bowl. Is that fair, or am I now actually being a hater?
You're being a hater, Adam, because
I
put your
am.
haterade away. Because here's the thing. Um, if the Dolphins are not so committed to running the ball in the red zone, does Tyreek Hill have more touchdown receptions?
Tyreek
Absolutely.
Hill dropped a touchdown actually against Baltimore. He literally
Right.
dropped.
He, yeah,
So
he
you have
he dropped one, and I get that. I'm just saying, you know, when you start looking at that, Raheem Mostert has what 20 touchdowns on the year. You know, I just I don't think you can start knocking receivers for that when receivers are being hugely productive and the reason that their team is in the red zone, that all of a sudden because they weren't targeted in the red zone or because the defense rolled coverage completely to them in the red zone, that suddenly means that they're the best receiver. What that means is that Mike Evans is 6'4" and he's being isolated on short corners a lot. That's what that tells me.
so, but
And
let me
so
ask you this: there's other 6'4" receivers who don't have 13 touchdowns.
right, but there's no other 6'4" receivers who aren't in the Pro Bowl who have as many yards as Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk is leading the league in yards per reception. His yards per reception are 18.3. That's
No,
insane.
that is insane.
That is insane. Mike Evans is high. He's at 16.2.
But,
Mike
yards
Evans
per
has
catch doesn't get you to the Pro Bowl. It's touchdowns, it's yards, and it's catches. They don't look at the little, 5.2 behind the line of scrimmage. All of these fascinating stats that you are giving are not wrong, but, do people look at that, do you think?
They look at it for Brock Purdy. That's all we've heard about all year is how much his guys are creating yak, and that's why he's doing so well, and that's why he shouldn't be MVP. So yes, people are looking at these. We live in an era of advanced stats and next gen stats, and so everybody is looking at these. This is no longer we're playing 2004 Madden, and if you get your guys leading the league in touchdown runs, it doesn't matter how many yards he gets, he's going to get in the Pro Bowl because it's Madden 2004. This is, we should be moving beyond that and looking, and we have all of these tools. So why aren't we using all of them? If you look at Mike Evans has been targeted 128 times, Brandon Aiyuk targeted 101, so 27 fewer targets. I mean, catch percentage. Catch percentage. This is huge. So this is the percentage of times that they are targeted that it results in a catch. Brandon Aiyuk, 71.3%. Mike Evans, 59.4%.
Here's what I'll say. I don't think, and Eric Norris says, BA nearly averages 2 first downs a catch. That is insane. Eric Norris, great comment. Here's what I'm saying. I'm not petitioning for BA not to make it. I think he should have made it. What I am saying is I honestly cannot take the in the same argument, you can't knock Evans for getting 13 touchdowns. You have to give him his flowers. Like, if no one else in the league and no one else in the NFC had even 12 and this guy had 13, in the same argument where you saying you can't fault him XYZ for having this or that, I'm saying you can't fault Mike Evans for having more touchdowns than everyone else is all, and that he deserves to be on the Pro Bowl as well. Now, if that makes Aiyuk not on it, then I'm pretty upset with that. I'm saying they both should be. So I should maybe clarify that I'm not saying that they should flip-flop and it's Evans over Aiyuk. They both should be is what I'm saying.
Okay, then who do you take off? I mean, you have
I know.
Puka Nakua, who has 1,445 yards, 101
AJ Brown
receptions,
had a ton of
who's
yards.
but he's only got five receiving touchdowns. Brandon
I
Aiyuk
know,
has
but
7. So according to
his
you,
yards, but look at
Puka
his yards.
Nakua,
AJ Brown had almost 1,500 yards. That's a
I'm talking about
ton.
Puka Nakua. Puka
Oh,
Nakua.
well, he had just 2 yards less than AJ Brown as a rookie.
Right. Right. So
That's
14, but
incredible.
Adam, you said it's about receiving touchdowns. That if you
Right.
have if you're higher in the receiving touchdowns, then you should be getting the Pro Bowl. And so now are we moving the goalposts for Brandon Ayuk between Puka Nakua and and Mike Evans. I
Here's what I'm
mean,
saying
so
though, then a caveat to that is if you are top 3 in a major category, then it's the same as having a lot of touchdowns, and he is. He is top 3 in the NFC in receiving yards as a rookie. So Puka Nacua, judging off that, does get in, is what I'm saying, because he's top 3 in another powerful stat. It's receptions, touchdowns, and yards, and that's it. Those are the 3 that people now you like get into it hardcore, and that's why we love you, and that is why we love being a part of this channel, because I didn't know some of that stuff. I know that Brandon Ayuk almost gets 2 first downs every catch. I mean, that is insane. I did know that. But some of this stuff, yeah, I didn't know. But I am saying that if you're in the top 3 in the league of a stat like rushing yards, rushing touchdowns as a running back, if you're in the top 3, you're in. Like, even if you only had 1 touchdown, that's what I would say. And hey, you can call me wrong. That's what I would say though. If you lead one of those major categories, in the top 3, and I guess technically the only sad thing about that is Brandon Ayuk, I guess if we're right? He wasn't top 3 in either, was he? Touchdowns, receiving yards, or receptions. He was not top 3. He was first in some of these other really awesome stats. Like every time he caught the ball, he had more yards than anyone else. That says a lot. That's pretty cool. But that's where
so
I'm at.
so if this isn't about, guys having a perceived value, like that's what I believe it is with Mike Evans or AJ Brown, and you say it's just about, their performance and they're being able to, be top 3 in different categories, then why didn't Amon-Ra St. Brown make the Pro Bowl? Because Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you look at him
Yep.
and Puka Nacua, he's been targeted the same amount of times as Puka Nacua, has 11 more catches, is only 74 yards behind him in receptions, but has 4 more
Yeah,
touchdowns.
9 touchdowns,
He's
112
got 9
catches.
touchdowns,
Yeah,
So you look at in receiving touchdowns in the
in
NFC,
15 games too.
um, he's number 3. He's tied for number 3 with Sam Laporta. Uh,
And there's
so
not
and
too many.
Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison is tied for a 3rd in receiving touchdowns.
Oh,
So
man. This
so
is
here's your argument that if you are top 3 in a major category, receiving touchdowns, yards, why are Jordan Addison and Amon-Ra St. Brown
Hey,
not in the Pro Bowl?
if we jump on a Lions podcast right now, they are super upset, I bet,
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they
about
are.
I mean,
But why are they putting Puka Nacua in there over? Because it's more than just the bulk stats. That's what my argument is.
yeah,
Is that
no,
they're
that's fair.
not just looking at the bulk stats. So that's why I go to that with Brandon Ayuk and say if we're going there, if we are saying it's more than just the bulk stats, then I have a hard time seeing why anybody, when you start diving deeper into it, says that Brandon Ayuk is not a Pro Bowl wide receiver. Because you have a situation here where now I think when you look at what Brandon Ayuk has done to this offense, and people say it's all Christian McCaffrey. Okay, I agree with that in some sense. I also think that what you saw in the latter half of last year was Brandon Ayuk emerging into that true X receiver role. And we've talked about it on the show, right? I've talked about it for years. I said what this offense really needed was a true X receiver,
Right.
somebody who you could isolate. And if defenses started rolling their coverage the other way and they're isolated on the backside, that's a guy you can go to. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to believe your guy will win. That's what Jerry Rice was. That's what Terrell Owens was after Jerry left. He was that X receiver, and we call it the X, or sometimes it's split end because they're on the end away from the tight end. They're the end man on the line that is away from the tight end. You have the tight end and you have the split end. That's the X receiver. So they are on the line. They're not off. So that means that corners can get up on them and get their hands on them. They can press them a lot easier. You have harder releases. That's what made Jerry so great. And so that's that guy that is the number 1 receiver. That's, all when you look at all the major receivers except for Anquan Bolden over the last 10 years, you're looking at mostly X receiver types, X guys. Maybe Wes Welker and Julian Edelman are slot guys there. But when you look at Megatron, when you look at Mike Evans, when you look at AJ Brown, when you look at Julio Jones, these are those X receivers. And how many times have we seen Brandon Aiyuk or Brock Purdy hit that 8-10 yard out route to Brandon Aiyuk, or in this last game, hit him on the slot fade against man coverage, and teams are a lot less confident running man coverage because suddenly now they have to isolate Brandon Aiyuk, and he's winning at an incredibly high rate, higher rate than Mike Evans. So that's what I mean. Like we're suddenly seeing, and I saw this on film from the Washington game. Washington was playing a lot of too high, and every time they did, we were getting 10, 12 yards a rush. And in that game, we hit several shots to Brandon Aiyuk early in the game, isolated on the outside. And that changes the game. That opens up your run game. So it's not just CMC is opening up Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk is opening up CMC. And he's opening up Elijah Mitchell, as we saw in this last game. So that's why I say, like, obviously, this is not just a bulk stats award. And I would expect coaches and players to be voting at a little bit more depth than just bulk stats. But what I think is happening is it's perceived value. Is they're voting at, we haven't watched tape on everybody all season, but I do remember when we played the Bucs, we talked about that we need to stop Mike Evans because of what Mike Evans has done in the league. And so this starts to become, guys who've been established are hard to knock off that list.
Jim Cushman, I agree. He says, I feel like AJ Brown was a perceived value vote. I think the tough thing is where the NFC lacks in running backs and quarterbacks, we have a good handful of wide receivers. So St. Brown and BA both deserved to be in the Pro Bowl. It's tough every year. I think of baseball has a lot of snubs every year where it's like a guy's batting 302, has 27 homers and 60 RBIs and doesn't make the All-Star team. And you're like, what in the world? And yeah, we do have to get to some of our super chats. We have to go first to Lisa. Yes, we know how Lisa feels about Brendan Aiyuk. She says that he should be number one and basically screw everyone else. And then also we have JR San Diego with their first super on a live stream. Thank you. So thank you for the super chats, and thank you, of course, Lisa, for always being entertaining. And then we have the Brockness Monster. Thank you. He says, Pro Bowl or not, my favorite thing about Aiyuk, the other team fans don't know him and then gripe, who the hell is this guy? And why is he always open?
Yeah. I mean, he's had what, 7 games this year of more than 100 yards receiving, he has more 100-yard games this year than any other receiver in the league. And so, that is something, because all of a sudden opposing fans are going to be like, I haven't heard of this Brandon Aiyuk guy, because he's not in the Pro Bowl every year, he's not in the All Pro every year. And suddenly he's catching everything that's thrown his way and he's getting 20 yards almost per catch. And they go, who the heck is this guy? Where did this guy come from? And so, yeah, that's what you love that about Brandon Aiyuk. And I think, the only, and this sucks for Brandon Aiyuk, but it's good for us 49ers fans. The only bright spot to this is that means Brandon Ayuk's contract's probably going to be a little bit cheaper going forward.
He's not
because he doesn't have the accolades behind it. But I have a hard time right now seeing 7 guys in the league that are playing the X position at a higher level than Brandon Aiyuk.
I wonder, let's throw blocking. Like, that's probably not part of it, but as we all know, it should be. And that,
hey, look, Vernon Davis made the Pro Bowl one year as a blocking tight end. There was one year that Vernon Davis made the Pro Bowl, or he made it as an alternate, and he only had like 360 receiving yards, but he was absolutely a blocking monster that year. George Kittle is known as the best all-around tight end because of his blocking ability. And so, yeah, we should definitely be considering this because there's so many of these big explosive runs that the 49ers have that they do not happen without Brandon Aiyuk blocking down the field. Think about Christian McCaffrey's massive 72-yard run to start the game. What was it? Just a few weeks ago. Trying to remember who it was against. But was it against Seattle? I believe it was against Seattle. And he, who was out there running down the field blocking for Christian McCaffrey? It was Brandon Aiyuk.
Oh yeah.
So,
And another super chat from Dr. Steve, his second of the night. Thanks, Dr. Steve. It taxes the cap, but should Aiyuk be a must resign?
I think so because again, it's what I talked about. That how do you replace a Brandon Aiyuk?
You're not going to draft a guy and assume he's going to do that.
No, I
We
mean even
drafted him
Brandon.
thinking he'd do that. We were
Yeah,
hoping that this is what he was.
and Aiyuk took a couple years to really come
Definitely.
along,
He was in the
and
doghouse. Yeah.
and when you look at what the 49ers ask of their receivers, one, their receiver route tree is massive. Two, they ask you to play all over the field. Three, they ask you to block and understand a lot of different blocking assignments. Look, Debo, we've watched him miss a lot of blocks because sometimes he just gets confused. That's so. I don't see a guy coming in. They're going to be able to draft a guy first round this year. Now they picked up his 5th-year option, so they have him under contract next year. But they need to figure out an extension. The trick is, are they going to be able to? They're going to get an extension for him and Chase Young. That's an interesting thing. And is Chase Young warranting an extension?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what we talked about when we got Chase Young. That hey, if it doesn't work out, we got him for $1.59, so it's fine. But if we kind of like what he's doing, it'll be interested to see how that goes. Okay, let's get off the Brandon Aiyuk train and on to the next one. As far as who are we?
Dre Greenlaw.
Okay,
Dre Greenlaw.
all right, let's hear it.
Okay. Now, an argument could be made for maybe somebody outside of the NFC is a linebacker, but I don't know. So here's who made the Pro Bowl for linebacker. There was only 2 guys. It was Fred Warner and Bobby Wagner. So the question comes: is this the same thing? Is this where we're seeing? Well, we got to go back to Brandon Aiyuk for a second. Zach Shrout with the massive super chat coming in big. He says Aiyuk is a dog blocking. He will be re-signed. Absolutely.
Not resigned.
Right. Not resigned. I almost said that, but re-signed. Yes.
Yes.
He must be re-signed. He's our best blocking wide receiver. So, thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate it. And he got us to sidebar back on to circle back around to Brandon Aiyuk for a second. But if we look at Dre Greenlaw and Bobby Wagner. One, I have a hard time, but again, believing that this is not a lifetime achievement award. Now, again, if we're going by Adam's thesis here of bulk stats, we're going to look at that. Bobby Wagner has played 16 full games. Dre Greenlaw has played in 15 games. Bobby Wagner has 92 solo tackles. Dre Greenlaw has 75. So, I mean, that's a pretty big difference. You're talking about 20% more tackles. But, Adam, you know me. We're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to look at these stats a little bit more. So, if we actually look into some of these advanced things that we're going to look at, we can look at one, how quarterback hits. Bobby Wagner 6, Dre Greenlaw 4. So they're hitting the quarterback about the same, between 4 and 6 is not that big of a deal. But let's also look at how these linebackers stand up in pass coverage because, people talk about tackles. Well, this is a passing league, right, Adam? So we gotta look at how are teams attacking linebackers because more than ever, linebackers are being asked to cover. So Dre Greenlaw has been targeted 82 times, Bobby Wagner 57 times. Dre Greenlaw has given up 58 completions, Bobby Wagner 47. But here's the difference on this. Dre Greenlaw is allowing 70.7% completion when he's targeted. Bobby Wagner, 82.5. So quarterbacks are having a success rate in completion 82.5% when targeting at Bobby Wagner. Yards per completion that teams are getting when targeting these guys. Dre Greenlaw, 7.9. Bobby Wagner, 11.2. That's huge.
Yeah.
When you look at those two numbers alone, that is huge. Okay? So that's yards per completion. If you look at yards per target, this is yards given up per target. Dre Greenlaw, 5.6. Bobby Wagner, 9.2. You target Bobby Wagner, you are almost going to get a first down for every time you target Bobby Wagner. Quarterback rating when targeting Dre Greenlaw, 100.5. Bobby Wagner, 116.7. Okay. Average depth of target when targeted as the nearest defender, Dre Greenlaw, 4 yards. Bobby Wagner, 5.2. This is getting a little crazy. Now, there was also I also have here missed tackle or percentage of the team's of tackles for snaps that they have. So that is the percentage of snaps to tackle. So Bobby Wagner is getting a tackle on 8.4% of the snaps he plays. Because again, we also have to look at this. This is why I don't like bulk tackles as the stat for linebackers making the Pro Bowl, because Bobby Wagner's defense has been terrible and their offense has been really good. So Bobby Wagner's on the field and has a lot more opportunities for tackles and a lot more times where teams are running the ball at the end of the game to end the game, to put the Seahawks away. So Bobby Wagner is getting a tackle on 8.4% of snaps. Dre Greenlaw, 8.8% of snaps. So if we look at that, if Dre Greenlaw is on the field the same amount of times that Bobby Wagner is, he's going to have a lot more tackles. When you look at yards after catch allowed, so that is the average amount of yards that a receiver is getting after catch when they catch it. Bobby Wagner is allowing 6 yards after the catch. Dre Greenlaw, 5.2. So in every single metric other than bulk tackles, Dre Greenlaw is proving to be a more effective linebacker. Teams are not getting the same amount of yards when they target him. They're not having the success rate when they target him. Again, is a passing league. He's getting more tackles for every snap he's playing. So he's getting around the ball. In every way, Dre Greenlaw is proving to be the more effective linebacker. And I agree with Lisa. Greenlaw over Wagner all day.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Another super chat, and I agree as well. Greenlaw is just more beast mode overall. And yes, those stats. Okay, so then let's go over this. In your mind, what was it? Is it that popularity thing? Like Greenlaw is not a household name west of you know, west of Las Vegas. No one knows who he is. They knew when he played Philly what happened and stuff like that.
I can tell you that people around the league, coaches and players know who he is. Then again, remember, Dre Greenlaw was number 2 in fan voting. So we can't just say that people don't know who he is. Are you telling me that the 16 teams or 15 games that Dre Greenlaw's played this year, that those teams don't know who Dre Greenlaw is? No, they do. But again, this becomes perception of established value. Bobby Wagner is perceived as, one of the best linebackers in the NFC. So how do you not vote for Bobby Wagner? That's what it is. But Bobby Wagner at this stage in his career, to me, is not as effective of a linebacker as Dre Greenlaw is. Again, if you have a guy that you're asking to cover from the center to the sideline in pass coverage, who would you rather have, Dre Greenlaw or Bobby Wagner?
Oh, no question.
Right. If you needed a linebacker that's going to run down Tyreek Hill on a jet sweep, who are you going to trust, Bobby Wagner or Dre Greenlaw? It's going to be Dre Greenlaw, right? I mean, we've seen these 49ers linebackers, like, he is just at a different level. Bobby Wagner is slowing down in his career. So I think this is just another nostalgia vote. I really do.
Yeah, I like that. I think Dr. Steve said earlier he's going to make the Pro Bowl for another team when he gets signed. As we have another man, the super chats are coming in. The Brockness Monster forgot about Dre. Johnny Dale Football Academy T-shirt is needed, please. Okay, duly, duly noted.
The only problem with that, just and we know a wonderful content creator that's a good friend of ours got in trouble for something like this. You can't use a player's name, image, or likeness on selling any merchandise without their approval. It's that whole NIL deal. So if we made a shirt that was referring Dre, he could have grounds to come after us. But we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
But I love the idea.
yeah, Dre Greenlaw is not the one. Those people that say I'm not the one. That's not the one you mess with. We love Dre.
No, I don't need Dre coming to my house. Upset.
You
If it was for dinner, that's
right.
a different deal.
Where's my money from the shirts? Here, just take it all. Take my house. Here's my keys. Man. So yeah, I'll say that Greenlaw not being the household name to me was the biggest thing there. Anyone else that you kind of a little side eye action? We went over the main ones as Dr. Steve. If you need your linebacker to punk off a security guard. Yeah.
It's not showing up on my end. I can't see it.
What, the super chat?
Yeah.
Oh, and then we also got another one. Did you see the other one that just came in?
No, my chats.
Oh,
Oh, there they are. There now.
okay.
It's apparently Restream was showing down. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you need your linebacker to punk off a security guard,
yeah,
Dre
he's the
Greenlaw's
one.
your man. Yeah,
And then
and
Glass
that's
City.
it.
Yep,
If
yep.
Smith Queen get Pro Bowl as linebacker too, then Warner and Law should. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do believe that the AFC doesn't have that they don't have a nostalgia name at linebacker there to take that spot. There's nobody that is there in the AFC that kind of has that establishment as a linebacker long term. And again, Bobby Wagner, to me, this is a nostalgia vote in, absolutely. And honestly, when you look around the landscape of the NFL, I think it shouldn't be any question. Queen and Smith and Greenlaw and Fred Warner, those are two teams that have two Pro Bowl linebackers. That's just the way it is. And so yeah, I don't know why Dre Greenlaw doesn't get it. The only thing I will say that I could maybe say is that Dre Greenlaw's missed tackle percentage is a good bit higher than Bobby Wagner. Bobby Wagner, I think, was 5.5%, and Dre Greenlaw was 9% as far as missed tackle percentage. So sometimes Dre will miss tackles because he gets so aggressive on it. But again, he's also in more positions to miss a tackle. Sometimes he's coming in flying from the side because he's got more speed to make it up. And Bobby Wagner was never in a position to make that tackle in the first place. So it's not counted as a missed tackle by Bobby Wagner because he couldn't get to the area code. But Dre Greenlaw is at least getting in the area, and sometimes he'll be tagged with a missed tackle.
Another Todd Emilio says, I don't think the Pro Bowl should be just based on stats alone, but how can you outright ignore stats? It's not bracket science or rocket science or brain surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like to believe, or at least think and hope that there would be a little bit more nuance to some of this. And I'd like to see some of these people come on or at least maybe even there be anonymous exit polling as why they voted for these guys. Like I want an exit poll on why did you vote for AJ Brown excuse me, Mike Evans? Why did you vote for Puka Nakua over Amon Ray St. Brown? Like, I want an exit poll on that. I want an exit poll on why did you vote for Bobby Wagner? And if it's just because he's been the best, man, well, no, that's not a reason to vote for somebody. If he's been the best,
Yeah,
he needs
that's
to
Hall of
be the
Fame.
best.
Yeah, you can talk
Yeah.
about Hall of Fame maybe, like, down the line, but for a Pro Bowl is year to year, you can't.
Yeah.
So,
Now, when you look at the guys who did make the Pro Bowl this year, I don't think there's really any surprises. Trent Williams, obviously the best left tackle in the league. Kyle
yeah.
Juszczyk, best fullback.
Oh,
On
100%.
a position that had almost been forgotten, and he's reinvigorated the position. And as far as the things he can do, he's an offensive weapon, and he is the best fullback in the league. George Kittle, obviously, way
Gotta have
better
it.
than yeah, George Kittle with his first down celebrations,
No fear.
and and he's the better tight end other than the K, even more than K Swift that's out there. And Javon Hargrave, I think everything on film and his production this year has shown that he belongs in the uh, in the Pro Bowl. Mooney Ward, he's been productive. He's been getting his hands on the ball. He's been taking it away. Fred Warner, he's the Fredditor. So he is the best linebacker in the league and absolutely should be making the Pro Bowl. Now, the biggest news and Nick Bosa, obviously making the Pro Bowl. I mean, he's got 10.5 sacks on the year. Is just a monster. Is somebody that changes the game. Now, the big news was that Brock Purdy made the Pro Bowl. And it's crazy to think this is the first time in 2 decades that the 49ers have had a quarterback make the Pro Bowl. I mean, this is something. I mean, we're talking 2 decades for a team that went with having probably the best quarterback in the league for 18 years, 19 years, to go 20 years without a quarterback making the Pro Bowl. And now Brock Purdy has brought the Pro Bowl quarterback moniker back to the 49ers.
Love it, love it. I mean, what can you say? So excited about another super chat first. So Kevin Johnson says the faithful owe. That's one thing. Eric Armstead, they owe him a Pro Bowl.
And
What's
and I will say the
that?
faithful tried. I mean, he was number 1 in Pro Bowl voting, but again, he's missed a lot of games this year.
Yeah,
And so, it's hard to send a guy to the Pro Bowl and he doesn't have the sack numbers that Javon Hargrave does. And that, when you look at Dexter Lawrence and you look at, you have Dexter Lawrence, Javon Hargrave, and that no-name guy over there in LA. He's been kind of a bum for a while. He's there. That those guys are going to be getting the Pro Bowl nod over Eric Armstead. But I do believe that Armstead has played at a Pro Bowl level when he's been in there, but has just it's still he's going to be one of those guys, I think, that ends his career at the 49ers, and we're going to look back and say that guy should have had a lot more accolades than they did. We have a few guys like that over the years that just but that not that they have a really good career, and you look back and they didn't get a whole lot of accolades. I think like a Dana Stubblefield. Now Dana's had some issues, but I think when he played, he was a player who was a very good and productive player and didn't get a lot of accolades with the 49ers because he was usually playing next to Bryant Young. And so I think that's what we're going to see with Eric Armstead. I kind of see him in that same role, or like a Ray McDonald role, where Ray McDonald didn't get, again, the guy had some off the field issues, but on the field he was a very good and very productive guy, and ends up not getting a lot of accolades.
what's up, Big Papa? Yeah. So it's one of those things where some of it's popularity, some of it is what have you done this year, but how much time have you missed, all of that. um awesome, shout out to John Chapman. Looks like Big Papa was on a Zoom and some buddies. Very cool. um One thing that I want to remind you guys is this is a full year that we have had this podcast, and the best way to boost the channel and to boost the algorithm when we go live is the hashtag JD49. We're also summoning the hashtag JHA for happy anniversary, as it is our 1 year anniversary. Remember, show Niner fans the channel and show them one of Johnny's videos. One of my favorites is Brock Purdy for MVP, but he does have the one that just came out yesterday as well, regarding our last game against Washington. Also follow on Instagram and Facebook. We share reels and quick videos of clips that Johnny has done and some quick hitters. We'll do that for the podcast as well. So make sure that you are showing people the channel, showing people the video. The cool thing about when you show them, yes, and Todd says hit the like button. The cool thing about showing the channel is what I love is we're the faithful, we're the community, right? And when you show someone the channel and you see over 21,000 subscribers and you show someone a video and it's got thousands and thousands of videos or views, I'm sorry, it's like that is the motivation for like, hey, you need to be a part of this and you should subscribe and you should help boost the channel. And we want to get it to more people, so we really appreciate everyone that's doing that. I also wanted to get into a little bit again more of our story. And I wanted to ask Johnny a question.
So Adam, real quick, we have another super chat here. I've got it on the screen. That was a different one. It's
Oh,
there
that
from
was a
Zach
different
Shrout. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
different one.
Zach hit it again. Okay, now I see that. Yeah, not just make it, but starting quarterback in the Pro Bowl, Brock Purdy. Yeah, talk about that for a little bit.
I mean, dude's in his second year,
It's
has not even
first
made
full year,
32 career
second year,
starts.
but first full year.
Yeah, first full year, has not even had 32 career starts, has broken Jeff Garcia's passing yards record, is got the highest quarterback rating of any quarterback that has really played a full season with the 49ers. There's just so many things. We've talked about them all year, that Brock Purdy, and everybody knows how I feel about Brock Purdy. So, this is just that cherry on the top. The biggest thing is he's not actually going to start in the Pro Bowl. He's not going to be at the Pro Bowl. So, that's what I'm really looking forward to, is that, yeah, we got 9 guys elected to the Pro Bowl. There's going to be 9 alternates that get really excited about going to the Pro Bowl this year, because they're going to go. There's not going to be 9 San Francisco 49ers at the Pro Bowl this year.
Yeah, for sure. So what I wanted to get into as we are going to wrap up here soon is, again, we're talking about a year that we have been doing this. Sometimes it feels like it's been 10 years in a good way, and sometimes it feels like it's been 8 seconds. But we don't do this a lot, and so I wanted to ask you, Johnny, a little bit more of your origin story and ask you about the first time that you kind of put a video together for the channel and what that was like, and maybe some of the struggles, or what was the most exciting thing about getting started as you started this channel and had your first subscriber and now you have over 21,000.
Boy, Adam's asking for some old history here. So what I did was, for years, I think I started this in 2013. It was in December of 2013. I had my wife and I just moved out to Alabama, and um and right after we got here, when we now rewind this a little bit, the year before I moved out here, my dad was had been dealing with cancer. He had lymphoma and had some really big tumors in his back and stuff. And so he was going through chemotherapy. And so my wife and I brought my dad. He was living in Oregon. We were living in Washington. We brought him up to my house in Washington. He moved in with us for about 6 months so we could take care of him while he was going through his chemo. If you know anybody who's gone through that, that's a rough process. And he was on, I believe it was 20 weeks of chemo. He did 2 separate rounds, and they looked like it was all clear. He was good to go. We moved out here, and then literally on the drive out, found out that the reason they some things weren't working right is that they had taken care of it in his back, but it had moved to his brain. And so he was going in for brain surgery and having more chemo directly injected there. And so I left here in Alabama, and he was staying with my sister. They had a little house in the middle of nowhere, Eastern Oregon. I went out there, stayed with him to be the person who could be there with him during all of that stuff. And all I had was an internet connection, and in this little house in the middle of nowhere, like literally the middle of nowhere. Like it was so far off the beaten path. And I subscribed to NFL Game Pass and started watching the All 22 film and started breaking it down on the forum of 49erswebzone.com, and would go game by game, looking at it. And I was doing it with stills and drawing, kind of like I do with the editing of videos, but I was posting the individual pictures and then usually a GIF at the end. But I didn't have all the editing software. I hadn't learned some of that side to put it all together. And I would go like post by post. And so people would get almost a slow drip, like every 15 minutes here to come a play. And I would do this, for on, and it got really popular on the forum site. And so I started doing it. It was just became a thing every week. And I did it through Harbaugh's 8-8 year, did it through the Tom Sula year, did it through the Chip Kelly year.
Man,
And and into Kyle Shanahan's first couple years, which were rough, but that it was interesting because I went and learned a new offense because it was different than what had been there for the previous three offenses. I learned a lot about the Kyle Shanahan system, and it was a fun journey for me because I started then rubbing shoulders with different people who knew a lot about football and was able to grow in my own knowledge of offensive systems and Shanahan stuff, and then
were
defensive
you
systems.
excited
And
when Shanahan came in? Were you like, "Oh, I don't know."
I was absolutely excited. I was looking around the NFL and going, it was my favorite flavor of offense in the NFL at that time. And so I was really excited to learn more about it. And then it was in 2019. Some people were like, you should do something on YouTube. You could probably get a lot of people who'd be interested in stuff like this. Okay. And I was like, nobody's going to want to watch or listen to me. There's no way. And so I launched, my channel, and it looks like I did this in February of 2019. I put out like 4 quick videos, um and I'm going to pull them up here, so people can see like this was really old school stuff. They're still on my channel. I haven't taken them down almost for nostalgia purposes, but this is what it looked like. This is one of the very first videos I did,
Love it.
where I'm literally just was on the screen trying to draw stuff out and motion back and forth. And I'm rambling on and on and on right here. I'm talking about a play that Matt Breida ended up taking to the
Oh, wow,
house.
Matt Breida.
So and somebody told me that the drawing I had in this looked like John Madden with uh what is it, Parkinson's. And I was like, wow, okay, thank you. But it challenged me, it pushed me to say, okay, I've got to do this in a little bit different way, because I saw things like what John Chapman was doing, and I was like, John Chapman is doing this at a much higher level than I am, and he's not rambling on and on like I am. And so I had to figure out a way to do something, and I started looking at guys like Alex Rollins and Brett Coleman with the way they were doing stuff, and with the high production values. And I said, I want to go more that direction. I was very much inspired by like the old TV show that they had on NFL Network, NFL Playbook, and
Love that.
I thought I was going to get about maybe 200, maybe 200 subscribers. Like that was, if I got 100, I was going to be like, wow, like that's insane. And it ended up shooting up to like 500 within a couple months. And I was like, whoa. And that's when I had to brand the channel and sort of things, because it was starting to get more traction than I ever really imagined. And then as I got into the 2019 season, that winning streak, people were obviously very interested in 49ers stuff on YouTube, that I think I grew up to, I think it was 4,000 subscribers that year. And, and really going through that 2019 season and all that kind of stuff, and through all the film stuff, going back to it, my dad had passed away in 2014 now. It's been 10 years in May. And so, a lot of it for years was, this was kind of my way to it was like my dad was sitting there watching over my shoulder as I was doing this. He didn't know anything about football, really, like, but it was just like it was there. And so the amount of support that's come along with this, the amount of people that's been interested, has been absolutely mind-boggling for me as I sit here, really, at the 10-year anniversary for me of just doing this, period. Um, it's been an incredible journey that I feel extremely honored to have, and to see the amount of subscribers that have come alongside has been absolutely fantastic. And so completely blew me away. I was really up in my feelings when I hit 20,000 subscribers. There's something about that round number that just is blows me away. I never, ever, ever imagined that this many people would be interested, or that, we'd be in a live chat and people would actually be interested in what I have to say about the 49ers. Like, it's just, I'm a guy. Like, that's how I always feel. Like, I'm a big fan. I'm as much of a fan as anybody else that's out there. I love the 49ers, and I have one of the greatest opportunities in the world, that I get to talk about 49ers with 49ers fans, and I get to talk about all this stuff, and that people even care is just amazing to me. And so it's just it's been an amazing ride. And then people come alongside and they want to do a podcast with me, and it's like, wow, golly gee whiz, this is amazing. I'm still that, like, golly gee whiz guy, like that. I'm here, and
Oh,
I get to
100%.
rub shoulders with some great content creators and some amazing fans, and it's just been a blast.
And I'll say this to continue that. Still K had a good question as we move forward. He asked, Johnny, would you prefer subscriptions through the new site instead of the Patreon now? Is the site replacing Patreon? And that is a segue to get into what we have moving forward. So talk about the website a little bit.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the question. Do I prefer subscriptions to the new website over Patreon? Yes. So when the guys who've done our website, it's Power Brand Systems, and if you are looking for anything, if you're a small business owner, if you're somebody who's got a brand that you're trying to push, anything like this, isn't, they're not just do creator websites. The guys Christian and Marco, who've been working with us, are absolutely phenomenal. They understand marketing. They understand point of sale. They understand funneling. They understand so much, and it's been amazing to have them come alongside. And they reach out to me because they're fans of the channel. And if you are interested in anything with them, I cannot push them enough. It's Power Brand Systems, pbsystems.com. You can go there and see what they do. And I would highly recommend, if you're looking at, you want to broaden your reach, broaden your scope, and do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice a massive amount of time. That's the number one way. And for what we're doing with them, they look at themselves as like the Patreon killer, because Patreon takes a percentage of everything and they don't. And so it's not like, as support grows, then the amount I'm sacrificing away to who's hosting it is changing. No, they've been an amazing partner to come alongside, and they also have a much cleaner interface for me to upload content with. Patreon was very, very frustrating, because, like, I was trying to upload videos on Patreon, and sometimes it would take 3 and 4 hours to process, and it was like I would upload them at the same time I'd upload something to go live on my YouTube channel. And by the time it finished processing, it was like I was already headed to bed because it was so late at night. And I'm just waiting for this thing to come through, and then I come through, and then I have to reload things and do this. And so some weeks it was just like there were so many issues there with Patreon that I couldn't deliver ad-free shows like I wanted to. And the community interaction wasn't there. I was not getting messages people were trying to send to me, and I was having a hard time. Sometimes I wouldn't even open messages when I try and respond to people. I'd sit there and it would try and go through my computer or the phone, and it just wasn't working in a really seamless way. Where now that provides a way that we can have a community, we can have exclusive content a lot easier. We can do things like a raffle. It's really easy, which, again, when we hit 50 supporters, we're going to be raffling away a handyman electric razor from Manscaped. So all that to say, yes, the goal is for the site to replace Patreon. I think in every way it's superior, and that was why we've spent the 2 months or so that we have trying to build that back end and support to make that happen. And so we do. I super appreciative of everybody who's become a member at the website. If you're wondering where it is jfa49.com, and I'm putting the link in the chat.
Yes, it is.
And yeah, and as still Kay says, to steal phrase from me, Patreon is cheeks. In a lot of ways it is really. I only did I freeze?
No, you're good.
Okay. It's just I got a weird message here from Restream, but it's not. I did it because people had asked me. They were like, "Hey, people who were watching the channel approached me, and they said, "Hey, I'd love to support the channel. Can I do this? Do you have a Patreon?" And I was like, "I don't even know what a Patreon is."
Oh,
And and so I looked into it and started one just as because people had approached me. And so with this again, Christian and Marco, they approached me, and they've done John Chapman's website, his members website, and they do a fantastic job. And yeah, like I said, we're looking to really work on over the next month and into the off season for some exclusive content. People have been asking me about the Ravens game. I've had a lot of people ask about the Ravens game. I'm looking at doing, and it won't be a full edited video. It'll be more like a recorded. Here's me with some of the film going over some of the key plays in the Ravens game. I'm looking at doing that as a members exclusive for people who are members of the website. And so, that's because that's one thing a lot of it was just I didn't really have much time, and I didn't have a lot of incentive for the time to put in off of that game. I was looking, I'm like, if I was estimating, I'm like gonna make like $70 off this game, and my kids were more important than $70. They're home from school and daycare, and it was a short week, and I wasn't gonna sit there and spend 2 days on that game. For something like that. I was like, my kids have been missing me a lot this football season, so and I said, I'm taking Christmas week for my kids. But yeah, all that to say, I don't mean to keep rambling on about everything, but that's where it is. And I'll share here. This is the members website. You can go here. This is jfa49.com, where you can go to become a member. And where I have an FAQ section, and
oh,
there's
who's that
Adam's
handsome
amazing
guy?
face.
Oh,
So
handsome.
yeah. So you can head over there. But yeah, it's been great. And Joel, thank you. You've become a member on the website. But yeah, it's he says, I don't
Technician
understand why
did
people want to
too.
relieve the horror show of the Ravens game. But and Technician, thank you. He says he just subscribed to the website.
Yeah.
And then also, if you're on Patreon, I sent out a message. And again, I really hope it made it to everybody. And this is one of the frustrations with Patreon. But I sent out a message for all the people on Patreon that I have an exclusive offer for Patreon members of an extended free trial. So what I did was I added, it's a link that only Patreon members have, that basically was through the end of January for a free trial, so they wouldn't be charged twice on the month. Where everybody else, there's a 7-day free trial.
Yeah, so thank you so much for all the support. I'll briefly just give my kind of end of this. As far as in December of 2022. Wow. Okay, that sounds like it was so long ago. December of 22, I had found the channel just months prior and was just enthralled by it. And when I say enthralled, we would throw it up on we would throw YouTube on the smart TV, and I would go over to my folks' house. I live very close. I'm an only child. As you all know, my parents got it right the first time, so it's just me. So I would go over there and I would say, "Okay, are you guys ready?" They'd be like, "Yep, we got it all kind of figured out and ready to go." And we would sit there practically with popcorn, no joke, and watch the breakdowns. And we got so into it. And then I found his Twitter and was like, "Okay, I own my own podcast production company, so I have many podcasts. A couple of you have asked about the new one that I just started, and it is called Swipe Smart. And the reason why I want to push it tonight is because new episodes come out Monday and Thursday. So Thursday, today, there's the new episode 2 just came out. And again, the reason I'm pushing it is my origin story, a lot from my dating life and things like that. So it's a dating podcast with my friend Heather, who is in my city, local here in Indiana. Episode 1, I interviewed her and went through her story. But episode 2 tonight, it just dropped, is she interviews me. And so we go through, and there it is. We go through and she interviews me and I tell my story and about my divorce and dating and love languages. And so if you are over 35 and single, this is absolutely for you. If you are have just gotten to be a fan of Johnny and I and you truly enjoy our banter and you want to get to know me more, then I invite you to like and subscribe to that YouTube channel, Swipe Smart, because I kind of get into my story. But all that to say, I had a podcast production company that manages podcasts, and I'm a part of about 20 other podcasts. And so I reached out to Johnny and I was totally just fanboy, like, hey man, I won't charge you. I won't do anything. Please let me just be a part of it. And he was like, this is I think God just does stuff. This was interesting timing because I was thinking about it and I didn't know what to do. Yeah, let's meet and let's go over ideas. And so we talked about how we would want to do stuff and it just made sense and literally a year ago, almost to the day, we released the first episode and it's been so awesome and to see the numbers, I think it's roughly around 4,000 subscribers in the last year because when I started with you on the channel, it was roughly around 16,000, I thought.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's been about 4,000 this season, which is
it
just amazing.
it's so
Um,
cool. Yeah. So
yeah, I
fun,
mean, and the season's not over yet, you know? Um,
right?
I think last year I picked up like 1,000 subscribers in January alone. So yeah, it's been a great ride and it's been fun and thank you all of you who tuned in and watch and super chat and all those things. You know, it really helps us. It helps us with the overhead we have for this and everything. I mean, so it's been great. And yeah, speed run to 25,000, then to 50K. We're just out here trying to catch up with Brad Graham. That guy's got a bajillion subscribers.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I think Brad does a great job, and it's been fun to work with all the different content creators we have. I'm really excited. I'm going back to the Senior Bowl this year, so we're gonna. That's at the end of the month. I just reserved my hotel. I'm going down for a little bit longer this year than I did last year. So going to be able to get into stuff like that. And so, we're going to be bringing you coverage there. If there's anybody that you're looking at and you say, and this is especially our members that you can say, hey, here's a guy. I want to get your thoughts on him. He's going to be at the Senior Bowl. Let me
Okay,
know.
Chris
You know,
Collinsworth. Now here's a guy.
now here's a guy. And I mean that in that, there's so much college football out there that usually I'm going into the Super Bowl, into the Senior Bowl, not really familiar with a lot of these guys. And sometimes I like that because I don't want to have a pre-bias coming in. My big guys coming out of the Senior Bowl last year was Sidney Brown, Osiris Torrance, Keanu Benton. Those were the three guys that I was really high on out of the Senior Bowl. And the fourth guy in there was Cameron Latu. Those three guys have all started for their teams this year. Osiris Torrance has been the starting right guard for the Buffalo Bills. And Keanu Benton has been starting with the Steelers and done very well on their defensive line. And Sidney Brown has started some games with the Eagles there and just had a 99-yard pick six. And then Cameron Latu was our tight end that we picked in the third round. So, some of that was me going down there and again, because I didn't have a pre-bias of seeing these guys before then, that was just based upon what I was seeing in practice. I came away with those guys really impressed. And so, there's a thing on there, but it helps to also know who should I be looking for as far as, what's something that you're interested in hearing there.
So one thing, Ryan Schmidt, do you want to go over that?
Yeah, so what I have up there right now are all of the review videos that I've done over the year, and that and they're ad free. So I've uploaded and I'm hosting them through YouTube and embedding them there because that gives a little bit easier of an interface as far as it won't slow down their side as much. But I've got them running ad free on YouTube. It's a completely separate upload that I did through YouTube for those videos, and I've got every single weekly review video now as far as exclusive content. So what I'm working on through this weekend and early next weekend is my first exclusive video, which is going to be one part of the route tree. The route tree videos is probably going to be 3 videos is what I'm initially thinking, because the Shanahan route tree is massive. We're talking like 70 different routes here. If I did one video on just the Shanahan route tree, it would be like a 3-hour video. So I want to break it down, and I actually want to be able to talk about stuff and then splice in examples, teach like what you would see in an offensive install day where they're installing these routes, and then they're they're going to talk about it, they're going to teach it, and then they're going to show you clips of guys actually running these routes as they want them run as a teaching tape. So that's what I want to do, and that takes some time. I've been working on it here and there. It's hard in the middle of the season to produce something like that because that's a lot of clips to pull and that's a lot of things to work through. And I'm also trying to organize it into, because I don't just want to go, the playbook is alphabetical. So it has the routes in alphabetical order, but I want to explain it not in alphabetical order, but in ways that it makes sense, is where routes are tied together. Like you have a blaze route and you have a blaze out. Those are right next to each other in alphabetical order, but you have a stick route, a branch route, and a tree route. Those are all the same route, but at different depths. That's why it's stick, tree, or stick, branch, tree. It's kind of funny that he names it that way, but they're in completely different spots on as far as the Shanahan route list. And so it's compiling these into what routes are tied in together. Most of them, like there's about 15 of them that have the same release. I want to have all of those in the same video. So, it's like, here's this. So it's sequential and it works through like they would on the offensive install, but I have to work and put that together. So, that's there. I'm going to be going over defensive coverages. This is stuff that is going to be filling in a lot of the offseason as different things. And it's going to be similar things with defensive coverages. We're going to go, these are deep dives, we're going to take into this stuff. So there's going to be whiteboard work and then teaching tape clips. So it's going to be a lot of work in there, and it's going to need to be in the spare time of the off season when I'm not doing all of this stuff. But I also wanted to at least build out a library of stuff, so it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to have exclusive stuff there, but wait a month to
Right.
subscribe to get anything. So that's why it's there, and that's why I'm also looking at then again doing the Ravens game in a more digestible moment, during that bye week kind of thing for members, as that is something that people have been asking about. So at least I can have that up there.
For sure. And Ryan says, "Man, sounds awesome. Can't wait." I can't wait because hopefully I get a discount, guys. So I'm really excited to see this.
Love a video on how I watch a football game. Usually it's me standing or sitting in a crouched position on my couch, chewing on my thumbnail. That's usually how most of the game is. And then randomly, my poor wife, if she's sitting there, I'm gonna be pausing and rewinding to explain when I notice a certain passing concept. Of like, that was a speedo concept, and so she has to listen to me through that. We may do maybe, I don't know. I was about to say something for this weekend, but I haven't talked to my wife about it, so I'm not going to commit. I was about to say we could do a live stream reaction for this weekend's game, but I haven't talked to my wife about it at all. She's probably listening to this going, "Oh, nope, hasn't talked to me about that at all."
Yeah, which, speaking of the wonderful Dawn Dell, we should probably get you home. Oh, there she is. We should probably get you home to her and the kids. So I will say thank you again and remind everyone to like and subscribe, share the channel, because we're trying to grow this thing and have a bigger community with the faithful. And we really want to grow it and get more guests in the future, and we want to get big time guests, and so we want to grow this thing out. So thank you for this year, many more years to come. Remember to take care of each other, stay healthy, and as always, Go Niners.